So good. Amazing. Hey, last week's word, hey, Shane Willard. Well, what an incredible word. Hopefully you kept up with it. He speaks quite fast. I had a lot of ideas. Some of you might have been spinning. I think sometimes I'm tapped out after about the first 2 minutes of Shane's messages. But I just thought he spoke that, as John would have said, at an Acts gathering for a lot of pastors and team. And I think it's a really significant word. It's a significant challenge in this season. And I think it fit beautifully in our Passion series because for me, it was a real reminder to get passionate about the major things of the gospel. Sometimes I think as Christians, we major on the minors and we get really loud about things that aren't actually that important, you know, and we forget to actually major on actually representing Jesus well. And so I thought it was a really good reminder to get passionate about God. I don't know about you, but after that message, it's like, how can I let my dinner table sit empty? I don't know about you, but every time I sit down for dinner and it's just me now and my family, I'm like, man, what opportunity do I have to invite someone in? I think in the West, we're so accustomed, like sometimes we don't even sit at the dinner table, we sit at the couch. You know, we're so accustomed to rushing one of the most important aspects of the Christian faith in the early church, which was the meal, the table. And I think if we could recover the table, families would be blessed, neighbors would be blessed, communities would be blessed, the church would be blessed. We wouldn't feel so awkward sitting next to strangers every week because they would be our friends. There's something about a table, and I don't know about you, but I felt deeply challenged, and I thought, man, I got to get passionate about the things that we need to major on. We need to major on these areas. Hey, this series, Passion, is going a long time. I don't know what week this is, week 8 or 9. Who knows? It just keeps extending. I thought we were wrapping it up like a month ago, but it keeps extending, and I think that's actually great because it's easy to get passionate for a moment. It's very hard to stay passionate. Hey, you guys there this morning? We're live in the house, yo. Good. I think it's really easy to lose passion. You get married, and it's like you have the honeymoon phase, and then it's like, hey, where did all the passion go? You know, you start exercising in January, and by February, where did all the passion go? Start your new diet, week 2, is where did all the passion go, you know? Passion so quickly diminishes. And I think it's been great that our series keeps going and going and going because it's a reminder, like, this was not to say, yeah, 1 week I'm passionate. It's like, come on, let's sustain this passion for God. A few Sundays back, I was sharing, just during our communion time, and I was sharing out of Luke 8, really cool story. And it's actually a story, it's weird, it's been a story that's been incredibly prophetic. I think God brought it across my eyes just before a significant season for my family, and I'm not going to share that this morning, but that might be a message later. But it's been a significant, a timely reminder from God for this whole sort of period of the last 3 weeks. And I love that God does that, is that when you're walking with God, walking in the Holy Spirit, He'll actually prompt you before you even get to something, so you already know He's in it. You don't even get in crisis and go like, where are you, God? You go, you're already in it. You're already in it. And so He's been speaking to me and ministering, and I've actually crafted a bit of a message around it this morning because I believe it's something that God wants to continue to minister into. So we're going to turn to Luke 8 in the Bible, and we're going to go to chapter 8, verse 40, reading from there. It should be on the screen, actually. I'm going to use my clicker. Boom. It says this, now when Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed Him, for they were expecting Him. That could be a whole message right there. I like that. They welcomed Him, for they were expecting Him. Sometimes I think we forget to welcome Jesus because we're not actually expecting Him. Then a man named Jairus, a synagogue leader, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with Him to come to his house because his only daughter, a girl of about 12, was dying. As Jesus was on His way, the crowds almost crushed Him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. Let's just pause right there. We're gonna go on, sorry, but we'll pause right there. In our story, there's 2 sick women. One woman is 12 years old, and she is dying. And the other woman is older, but she's been suffering with this issue of blood for 12 years. So it's these 2 women in the story. Here they are. is what they look like. No, I don't know. So we've got two women, 12 years old, and she's dying, and then we've got a woman who's been sick for 12 years. And when it speaks about the issue of blood or that health issue, that's relating to women's health. I'm not going to talk about that this morning. But she's been sick for 12 years. Just remember that. In the Bible, there's some numbers in our Bible. Some numbers don't mean much, but there are numbers in our Bible that actually carry a greater meaning than just a quantity. There are numbers that are dotted throughout, and it's not just like, oh yeah, cool, 12, that's a nice quantity. It's actually, there's some significant numbers. Not all numbers are significant, but there's certainly a handful that carry a real greater significance than we realize. And one of these numbers is this number 12. Number 12. And so to a Jewish listener, a Jewish witness, a Jewish reader, someone in that Hebrew society, when they hear the number 12, it means so much more to them than it does to us. Like I don't know about you, but when I just open my devotional and I read about number 12, like, who cares? Like, why do I need to know someone's 12 years old? Why do I need to know someone's been suffering for 12 years? We just read over that really quickly, but for a Jewish reader, that creates far more thought than it does for us. Far more thought. So in a Hebrew society, which is the society which in Jesus lived in this Jewish context, the number 12 is laced with meaning. And so the number 12 actually represents the nation of Israel. Well, when you see the number 12 in the Bible, what it's really representing is a nation. It's representing the people of God. It also represents this idea of completeness or authority. I'm not going to talk about that this morning, but I want to talk about the idea that 12 draws us to this idea that it's speaking about a nation and it's speaking about the people of God. So I'll give you a little thing. So in Genesis, at the beginning of our whole sort of Christian story, we meet Abram and Sarai, who later become Abraham and Sarah. And they receive this promise from God that their descendants, they're going to have children, and their descendants are going to be as numerous as the stars in the sky. They're going to be God's very own people. But they go year after year. They have no children. They can't get pregnant. They're having issues. They get super old. And then God still says, no, that's my promise to you. And miraculously, they have a son, and his name is Isaac. And later, Isaac goes on. There's a whole lot of things that happen. I'm not going to fill that in. Later, Isaac goes on and he marries Rebekah. And they have two sons. They have a son called Jacob and they have a son called Esau. And then later, going on again, stuff happens in the Bible. I'm not going to read all that this morning. Later, the son Jacob goes and he marries and he has 12 sons. 12 sons. And those 12 sons become the tribes of Israel. God's people. So this is what's saying. 12, 12, 12. Are you getting this? Good. From this point on, that 12 is the number that represents a nation. There are 12 spies that are sent into the promised land to seek out the interests of a nation. Hey, can we go take this promised land? There's 12 of them. They go out and they represent the eyes of a nation. When Israel returns from exile, when the Babylonian Empire have come in and they've massacred everyone, they've taken all the young men, they've taken them to the Babylonian Empire. They're in this period of exile. When they return from that, the prophet Ezra appoints 12 priests into this temple, signifying the reestablishment of a nation. I'm going to put 12 priests back in, and that's going to signify the reestablishment of a nation. If you go on even to the last book, the book of Revelation in chapter 21, it's talking about a new heaven and a new earth, what Jesus is going to establish. And it says this in that chapter. It says there's 12 gates, there's 12 angels at the gates. Written on the gates are the 12 tribes of Israel. The new city has 12 foundations, and on those foundations were the names of 12 apostles of the Lamb Jesus. 12 is this massively significant number, and it represents this idea of not just in our story, it's not just two individuals. We're drawn to think about a nation. We're drawn to think about a collective group of people. We're drawn to think about more than just two individuals. Does that make sense? So why is it significant that the little girl who's been dying is 12 years old? And why is it significant that the woman has been suffering for 8 years and not 9 years or 7 years? It's because this story is not just about two individuals. It's trying to draw us to a think of, hey, this is whatever's happening here is a lesson. It's a sign. It's a miracle for the nation, for the entire group of God's people. So this morning when we read the story, it's not just some historical account about two women who are inconsequential. This is a story for us right here, right now, because we're God's people. We're God's people, and he wants to speak to us this morning. So as we go on with this, remember, this is for us. This is for God's people. And a woman was there, it says this, who's been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him, being Jesus, and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. Who touched me? Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, Master, like the people are crowding and pressing against you. But Jesus said, someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me. Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. While Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. Your daughter is dead, he said. Don't bother the teacher anymore. Hearing this, Jesus said to Jairus, Don't be afraid, just believe, and she will be healed. When he arrived at the house of Jairus, he did not let anyone go in with him except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. Meanwhile, all the people were wailing and mourning for her. Stop wailing, Jesus said. She is not dead, but asleep. They laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But he took her by the hand and said, My child, get up. Her spirit returned, and at once she stood up. Then Jesus told them to give her something to eat. That line's really interesting. Don't bother the teacher anymore. Don't bother the teacher anymore. And when I spoke about communion, I talk about this idea that sometimes in faith we get to this place where we go, I just don't bother. Don't bother Jesus anymore. That's done. That's beyond. Don't bother the teacher anymore. And I really believe that this story is a story about the impact of people who bother. And particularly people who bother Jesus. So I wonder, when we think about this story is not just a nice little or whatever. It's a story about people who decide to bother Jesus. I love that. I love that the guy comes and said, hey, your daughter's dead. Don't bother the teacher anymore. Do you know Jesus was in a teaching moment? He was teaching in that moment. His attention was elsewhere, and Jairus was on the sidelines of this little teaching moment, probably agitated, probably annoyed, like, hurry up, Jesus. And I can imagine if Jesus was talking and I needed to deliver a message, I'm not going to the middle of the crowd and saying that out loud. I'm going to whisper that message in the ear of who needs to hear it. So Jairus' servant comes in and just whispers in his ear maybe, hey, Jairus, your daughter's dead. Don't bother the teacher anymore. And the moment Jesus heard that whisper, we thought Jesus was distracted. We thought Jesus was just all caught up in his teaching moment. The moment he heard it, he just turns around, don't be afraid. Just believe. Sometimes in life, we can think Jesus is distracted and not attentive to what's going on. He's just off using this as a teaching moment, healing other people. No, he hears it straight away. Hey, don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged. Just believe. Maybe this morning you think Jesus is not attentive to your life. He hears it. And he turns around straight away. Hey, don't be discouraged. Just believe. That's a side point. We're getting distracted. The story is about people who bother Jesus. It's interesting because this woman with the issue of blood, she shouldn't have been anywhere near Jesus that day. Some of you might know that, some of you may not. She shouldn't have been in that crowd. She shouldn't have been anywhere near Jesus, because in a Hebrew context, in the society within which she exists, under the law with which she believes, that Levitical law, her health issue made her unclean. She's unclean. And the law stipulates this, that unclean people are to be isolated from others until they've been made clean. If you're unclean, there's a process with which you go through. The law stipulates this, and you go through this process, and until you've been made clean again, you're isolated from society. You're actually not meant to be around other people, because that's not a good thing. So for a woman, every time it came to the monthly cycle, they were considered unclean, and they had to go through a process of being made clean, isolated, and if they were present in different things, then they would make other people unclean. Doesn't that just sound awful? Like, who just got a little bit more thankful for Jesus? Like, I'm certainly thankful that Jesus came and said, hey, I've fulfilled the law. Here's the new covenant. I'm like, thank you, Jesus. This thing was just so complicated with so many rules, and really a lot of it was it caused isolation of people. And Jesus said, hey, I got a different way to do this. Thank you, Jesus. Sounds awful, but imagine the disruption that brings if it's happening, once a month, every 12 months. But imagine if that thing has been persistent for 12 years. Imagine if for 12 years you've had this health issue, which means that you're isolated, you can't be part of community, you can't be around your friends, you can't do all these things. You can't go out. You go through the process to be made clean, but the issue persists, so you just stay unclean. 12 years. Like 12 years, this woman hasn't been able to engage. But what I love is that this woman, after 12 years of being unclean and isolated, she forsakes tradition and she shows up in a crowd, and her mission is, I'm going to touch Jesus. I'm going to touch Jesus. Because the law couldn't make her clean. She knew that. The law can't make me clean. I've been trying for 12 years. I get clean, and the issue persists. I'm still unclean. What the heck do I do? And I've got no hope in this thing. It's just ridiculous. And then she decides, well, I've heard some stories about Jesus, and I'm going to forsake all the other things, and I'm just going to pursue Jesus. I don't care what society says. I don't care what that says anymore. I'm going after you, Jesus. And wherever you are, there I am. And if it's in a crowd, screw it. I'm going to be there. After 12 years, I reckon this woman probably could have easily had an attitude of, I can't be bothered. I don't know about you, but sometimes if I'm sick for 5 days, I can't be bothered. Sometimes if I've come and got prayer once and it didn't happen, I can't be bothered anymore. Some humans are laughing because that's me, but I was like, no, I'm never like that. Have you ever had that? You just got an issue and something's going on, and it's like you get prayer once and, oh man, you get prayer twice and maybe got prayer 10 times, and at some point, something you just go, I just can't be bothered anymore. It's not working. But what I love is this woman goes, well, I'm not going to bother the law anymore because that don't work. But what I am going to bother, I'm going to bother Jesus. I'm getting to Jesus because I'm going to bother that man this morning. Here's the problem with that woman being present in the crowd that day is that in law, if an unclean person touches a clean person, that unclean person now makes that clean person unclean. Again, ain't glad for Jesus? What a crazy society. Imagine if we're all worried about who we're sitting next to this morning if they're unclean. Wouldn't that be terrible? If an unclean person touches a clean person, then that unclean person makes the clean person unclean. Did you get that? Yeah. So that's a real issue, because if someone unclean shows up in a crowd, especially a crowd that is pressing in against one another, how many people did this woman touch? How many clean people did she make unclean that day? This is reckless. What is she doing? This is ridiculous. And the problem is if you get touched by someone unclean and you become unclean, now you have to go through this process. There's a stipulated process about now the process you have to go through in order to be made clean and be part of society again. Isn't this just a nuisance? Aren't you glad I don't get up every Sunday and preach, okay, now we're going to look at these 3 Levitical laws? And I'm glad I get to do this thing after Jesus, It's just crazy news. So if she's touching people, this crowd's pressing up, every person she touches is now being made unclean. And I reckon no one gathered there that day wanted to be made unclean. Everybody who was seeking Jesus wanted to go there. They didn't want to be made unclean. They were hoping that Jesus was going to bring them solutions, but now they've turned up and some woman who's not meant to be there is touching them, and the solution they were chasing is now an issue because now they're all unclean. Ugh. No one wanted to be unclean that day except for one person. There was one person in that crowd who wanted to be made unclean, and that person's name was Jesus. Jesus was the only person in the crowd that day that actually wanted to be made unclean. It says this in Luke 8, going on. And a woman was there who'd been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him, being Jesus, and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. Who touched me? Jesus said. Who touched me? And then Peter goes, chill out, Jesus. Is like, so many people touching you. Who hasn't touched you, Jesus? And then and Jesus goes, no, who touched me? who touched me? If we come back to the law again. Actually, firstly, let's say this. It's really interesting that Jesus doesn't try to hide the fact that he got touched by someone unclean. Like, if anything, you're trying to avoid that. Because it's disruptive. If someone touches you who is unclean, all of a sudden you've got this process you have to go on. You have to be made clean. It's annoying. So if anything, you're like, if I was Jesus, I'd just be like, I don't want anyone to know who touched me. Because it's going to be disruptive. But Jesus says, no, I'm actually going to make a spectacle of it. Who touched me? Like, chill out, Jesus. No, who touched me? He makes this massive spectacle of it, like, who touched? Peter's like, stop it, man, stop it. Who touched me? He literally goes out of his way to make the biggest deal so that everybody there knows who touched him. Who touched him? Jesus goes and makes a spectacle, and what he's doing is he's making sure that there are as many witnesses as possible to the moment where someone touched him and he became unclean. That's his whole objective. I want as many people to witness the fact that someone touched me and now I'm unclean. Why is it so important that Jesus is unclean? Why? Because at Jesus' next stop, he needed to be unclean. At Jesus' next stop, he needed to be unclean. The next stop is the sick 12-year-old girl, but she's no longer just sick. It says this, a woman was there, going on. And while Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. Your daughter is dead. He said, don't bother the teacher anymore. The 12-year-old girl who was sick is now dead. She's not just sick, she's dead. And going back to the law, Levitical law says that it is a sin to knowingly walk into a room where a dead body was. You can accidentally walk into a room and discover that that's not a sin, but it's a sin if you knowingly walk into a room where a dead body was. In other words, you don't have access. If you're clean, you can't walk in there unless you're unclean. If you're unclean, you can walk in there happy as days. Happy as days. That's like a Jesus mic drop moment. Isn't that cool? I was like, whoa, Jesus. Sneaky Jesus. At it all again. He's like Sherlock Holmes on steroids. And the important thing is it's not just that you know you're unclean, but you need a whole bunch of people to be witness to the fact that go, yeah, he can go in there because he's unclean. Who touched me? The woman comes and she bears witness to every single person there. This is my issue. I'm unclean. And I touch you, Jesus. By touching you, I made you unclean. And all the people who are gathered go, yep, he's unclean. He gets to the next stop. Jesus, you can't go in there. Crowd, what do you reckon? Nah, he's unclean. Jesus goes in. I love this. Because the woman with the issue of blood bothered Jesus, Jesus now had access. If the woman with the issue of blood had not bothered Jesus, Jesus would not have had access. Isn't that fascinating? If the woman with the issue of blood had not bothered Jesus, Jesus would not have had access. If it were not for that woman with the issue of blood breaking out of tradition and bothering Jesus, the next generation, the 12-year-old girl, would not have had the opportunity to be raised back to life. She wouldn't. She wouldn't have had the opportunity to be raised back to life. I want to say it's Mother's Day. It's Mother's Day. It's a really significant day. And when I was thinking about it, I thought that mothers are one of the most incredible examples of what it is to bother time and time again for the benefit of the next generation. There's like one or two mothers like, yep. Come on, if you're a mother, you bother every day. When you can't be bothered, you still bother. You're incredible. Like, stop being humble. Come on, a mother bothers even when she's not that great in and of herself, even when she's unwell. You know, they keep changing the nappies, they keep feeding the baby, they keep picking up the kids from school, they keep preparing food and packing lunches, they keep doing the bedtime stories and washing the pajamas. Mums just keep bothering. I think mums are this beautiful picture of what it is to bother time and 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 time again for 18 years for the benefit of the next generation. Mothers are incredible. You're amazing. You're amazing. But I want to say this as well. The next generation are not just waiting for you to provide all of life's basic needs. The next generation, your children, are waiting for you to bother to touch Jesus. And that's not just for mums, that's for us as adults. Every adult in the room, we can bother to do all these different mechanical, physical things. But the next generation are waiting for our desperate, faith-filled pursuit, our bothering of Jesus to touch him in order that we would receive our healing, but in order that the next generation would have access to the life-giving power of Jesus. This story is not just about two individuals, it's for us as a nation. It's saying, God's like saying, bother me. Bother me. As a parent, I love that you keep going. As an adult, I love that you keep going. And you got these things going on. But the goal is not just to bother and try to serve all these physical needs. No, get to me, Jesus. Touch me, because the next generation is relying on you encountering Jesus, you being healed by Jesus, you just having these moments with Jesus. Because the moment one generation reaches out with desperation and passion and bothers Jesus and touches him, another generation gets access to his power. There's a story for a nation. Come on, if we're going to see the next generation fully alive in Jesus, we must learn to bother Jesus. I think some of us think we hope to get to heaven. We hope Jesus says, hey, well done. You were so strong and you did it all by yourself. I'm so proud of you. You were in so much need, and I saw how you just put on a brave face and you just kept going. I think we're hoping Jesus says these things, and I think the only thing he really wants to say to me is, Matt, welcome to heaven. You were one of the most needy person I knew on earth, and I loved you for it. I loved you for it. You were so needy, and you came to me. And things happened, and we did this thing, and we healed you, and we got you set up, and we got you anointed, and we got you positioned, and look at what we did with your life, Matt. I'm so thankful that you brought your need to me. I think Jesus is inviting us to bother him. Because we cannot heal ourselves, but he can. We cannot make ourselves clean, worthy, righteous, but he can. That moment is the gospel. It's the gospel. Jesus literally invites unclean people to touch him so that they can be made clean. He takes upon himself our uncleanliness. He's willing to be made unclean. He's willing to be despised. He's willing to become sin. He's willing to die on the cross. He's willing to become what we are deserved of, the punishment, death. He's willing to do that so that we can be made clean, so that we can be healed. That's the gospel. Come on. We cannot ensure the life of Jesus in the next generation, but he can. He can. I really believe he's inviting us to bother him for ourselves so we get healing, but I believe he's inviting us to bother him so that the next generation actually receive the gift of Jesus. They receive his life-giving power. He's inviting us. Come on, I believe the next generation are waiting for someone to step beyond religious expectation, religious rhythm, religious traditions, to step beyond the socially acceptable and display, no matter the cost to their pride, a desperate pursuit of Jesus. Like, that's actually what the next generation are looking for. Like, they're not looking for me to show up in my nice clothes to church, sing some cute little songs. say a few prayers and go home. No, they're looking to see if Jesus can actually do something in my life. Can he heal the broken? Can he raise the dead to life? Can he do these things? And I got to find a way to, instead of hiding everything that's broken, hiding everything and running away from it, I got to find a way to fall at the feet of Jesus and say, man, I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. The thing that stood out to me most and hit me in everywhere, our children need more than religious homes. Our children need more than religious homes. Jairus was a synagogue leader. His house was a religious household. A religious household. But when his daughter lay dead, religion only sought to keep the solution from entering. Religion stood at the doorway and said, sorry, no entry. If you're clean, you can't come in here. Jesus, you can't come in here. Clean ministers can't come in here. Religion literally stood at the door and said, sorry, you can't come in here. Religion sought to keep the solution from entering, but because of one unclean woman's pursuit of Jesus, access was made possible. Sometimes we underestimate. We think, oh, I'm being brave and strong, and I'm putting on this nice persona for everyone else. No, the thing we need of you most is to fall at the feet of Jesus and receive everything he's got for you. Everything he's got for you. I want to say this. Let us not create religious households. Even this church, let us not create a religious household where religion would stand at the door and permit access to the one who needs to walk in. Let us not create religious households, but rather let us pursue Jesus. Because when one generation bothers Jesus, the next generation encounters his life-giving power. The next generation. Maybe you want to stand with me.